Protecting the Lives of Two Paroled Soldiers by S.C. Turnbo. There were some desperate fellows in the Civil War. Now these ruffians killed indiscriminately unarmed men of the opposite side whenever they had a chance. These characters belonged to both armies, and it was a shame to the honor of regular armies of both North and South that these barbarians were tolerated in their wicked work. And in some cases the commanders were not to blame, for they could not help it, and the cruel offender went unpunished. Mr. William Robinson, a member of the Arkansas 1st Cavalry on the Union side, gave the writer this account. I remember, shortly after the Battle of Prairie Grove, that company I belonged to and another company of regiment were sent from Fayetteville to Springfield, Missouri, for supplies. Or in other words, a train of wagons was sent, and we were ordered to go along with it as an escort to guard the wagons to prevent them falling into the hands of the Confederates. Now, I was well acquainted with a number of men who had enlisted in the Southern Army who had formerly lived in Pulaski County, Missouri, where I was born and partly raised. These men were my friends. Though we were divided in sentiments, they went south and I went north, as the saying was then, yet I loved these men, for they were good neighbors, and the war did not spoil our friendship. True, I thought they did wrong in defending some principles that the Southern people held to, but I suppose they thought I did wrong by enlisting for the defense of the Stars and Stripes. I have never regretted in taking sides with the Union, and I do not suppose that a true Confederate soldier was ever sorry that he contended for the sunny South. I am sorry to say that there were a few rough men in our regiment that had no mercy on the Confederate prisoners, if they had the opportunity to display their cowardice without being exposed. Now, a few days after the Battle of Prairie Grove, a number of the Confederate soldiers who lived in Missouri that were captured by our men in the fight at Prairie Grove were paroled to return to their respective homes. Now the federal authorities deemed it prudent to do this, for they thought that after these men had returned home, they would reconsider what they had done in taking up arms against the Union, and they would join the Federal Army and make as good soldiers on the government side as they had been for the Southern Confederacy. And so they were paroled, and they were sent on their way to obey the laws in force where they lived. On our return back from Springfield with the wagon train of supplies, we met several of these paroled soldiers on their way home. And I noticed that when we met these men that they had passed on a few of our desperate and wicked men of our command, and that they would drop back, and after they were gone, we would hear a distant report of guns. And it was not long before it leaked out that these men were murdering paroled Confederates, and that a few officers encouraged the dirty and brutal work of shooting these unarmed, defenseless men. Some of the men, including some of the officers, protested against this barbarity, but it did little good. Finally, we met two paroled men who were my neighbors in Pulaski County, their names of which were Buck Elmore and Milton Brown. Now, I recognized them, but I did not get to speak to them, and if they recognized me, they did not let it be known. Now, my brother Ezekiel Robinson was a member of the same company I was, and we were riding side by side when the two Southern men passed us. As soon as they had gone by us, I told my brother who they were, for he had failed to recognize them. Now I told him that we must not let the wicked men kill them, and he agreed to help me interfere on their behalf. In a few minutes more we saw that these same murderers dropped back, and we knew their purpose at once. I and my brother waited long enough until they rode just beyond our view, and we followed them and urged our horses into a fast gallop. And as we had overtaken them, just as they caught up to the two Southern men who were traveling the main road, and not making any efforts to shun us, by turning to one side or following bypaths. The two Southern boys were surprised at seeing the 4 cavalrymen dash up behind them and followed by 2 others, and were horrified to find that the first 4 men were preparing to shoot them down. But we interfered and informed them if they shot them boys, they would suffer for it, and more than that, if they killed them, they would have to kill us too, if they got their shots in first. And they cursed terrible oaths for our interference. We told them we intended to protect them, and they were on parole, and none but cowards would take advantage of them. At this, they called us traitors, and all the other mean epithets were hurled at us that they could think of. Finding that they dare not hurt the 2 men in our presence, they reined their horses around and rode back toward the command. It was now that the 2 Southerners recognized I and my brother, and thanked us very courteously for our timely interference in saving their lives. We had no time to further talk, for we were compelled to leave them and gallop back, and soon overtook the 4 men that wanted to kill them. Now they were sulky, but we kept our eye on them, for we were afraid that they might go back and kill the 2 men yet. But they did not. Now some years after the great struggle had ended, and what was left to us would settle down to citizenship again, I met these 2 men once more, and after a cordial greeting of each other, they informed me that they quit the main road after we left them and went through the woods and the prairies and followed the trails all the way to their homes in Pulaski County.